Hi, I'm Tom Stevenson and welcome to Microsoft Project, the course. I'm a professor of construction management and I've taught Microsoft Project for many years, as well as all kinds of construction project management principles, practices. In this course, we're showing you how to use Microsoft Project. This is video number 8, and it's actually the second video on updating. This time we're going to do a quick updating and show you recovery. If you're new to Microsoft Project, I'd suggest you look in the description below. I have a link to the other previous videos. You can also check my playlists. I have many Microsoft Project videos and other videos in construction management. So please click subscribe, click notifications so you can see upcoming videos that I'm going to be working through and become part of the community. All right, so let's get started. Now, one of the things that you should know is that in this particular series, due to video viewer feedback, I've included a link that you can download a start point file for Microsoft Project so that you can download and start working on it yourself. And that will make it easier for you to learn or to retain the information rather than just watching passively, because I'm going to be building on this as we go. As you can see on the screen, I've got a lot of activities and a lot of things done. We kind of worked our way through that in previous videos, but you could just download the start point file, be right at here, and follow along, which makes it really resonate with you. Or you can just follow along visually, looking for particular things you may be trying to figure out, which works too. All right, so I'm going to start off, and we've got our overview here. We've got our activities. This is a classroom remodel project, so we're doing a bunch of classrooms here, and we've kind of got it developed. It was starting, I guess, the way we've got it set up now, January 11th, 2023 it's set for. It doesn't matter what the year is. You could always go into project information, change it to whatever year you want or date you want. We have not set a baseline yet. So if we're talking about updating, we have to set a baseline. And setting a baseline means that we're going to set a baseline. This is a cost loaded schedule, so it has costs added to it, so it'll remember the costs. Right now there's no baseline, so it doesn't remember the costs. If we change something, it's just changing it. You would not see any variance. So what happens when you set the baseline is this variance column copies over here and is pasted there. And then when you make changes, it's just a calculation between total cost and baseline, and it'll show it up in the variance. Are you over budget or under budget? Now, if I click the square icon box over here, and that's the quickest way to switch screens. I go down to variance. Same thing's going to happen. Now, if you didn't have a cost loaded schedule, you'd probably be really concerned about this. If it's cost loaded, you're really concerned about costs and this. It just gives you more information. And so this is all about time. And this will copy our thoughts on how we want to run our project. This is the baseline with what information we know now. This is what we've entered and we believe to be the way that we want this project to unfold. And that would paste it over here, and then copy this and paste it over there. And of course, nothing ever goes the way you exactly plan in project management. If somebody's telling you it always does, that's why you do a plan. I wouldn't listen too much because things always change. Look at the last few years, and we've had all these supply chain issues, and there's always something going on that causes us to change and pivot and iterate our schedule. So Microsoft Project or any scheduling software should be able to adjust and pivot and iterate as you go. And that's what we're talking about today. Okay, so first thing I want to do is I want to go to project information, and I'm going to put in a project a status date. All right, so, oops, no, I don't want to do that first. I haven't put in the baseline. I could have put it in, but it's okay. Set baseline. All right, so I'm going to go here, project, set baseline. Set baseline, and I usually like to have it in this variance screen because I like to see it happen in front of me. Set baseline for the entire project, click OK, and voila, it just did that copying and pasting that I just mentioned. And the same thing if I go back to the cost screen, click on the square icon, go to cost, same thing. Now I have those baseline numbers. Great, that's wonderful. All right, so the next thing I want to do is I want to do a little update on this schedule so I can do a little recovery and show you that in this video. And then the following video, I'm going to do a bunch of updates and recoveries and file naming protocols. I'll introduce you to file naming protocols today, but we'll really get into it in the next video. Okay, so right now I'm going to set a status date. So to do that, I generally go here. Microsoft Project, you can do the same thing a whole bunch of different ways, but I usually go to Project Information and see where it says status date over here. So right there, I'm going to pull that down and I'm going to go back to, let's say, February 17th. All right, so that's going to be over here. I'm going to put in a status date. I'm going to click OK. Now, what's a status date? Status date is the date you update the schedule to. It means it's got to be like today is February 17th, and I've got to be then looking back on what happened. Now, if you notice under the Project tab, where I was, Project tab, you notice that now it says status date. Now, I could have gone here and put in a status date, but I do find that Microsoft Project gets buggy with this entry for some reason. Very often I've found it puts it a year ahead or a year behind, and that annoys me immensely. So I've never had a problem with doing it in this spot, so that's generally where I do it. I'm sure it's just my version that does that sometimes, you know, if you got the online version, I think they correct these bugs very rapidly and quickly, which I'd started out this course using the online version. Had a little bit of microphone problems, so I've been using the downloaded version for now. Definitely the online version usually has the bugs updated quickly, which is nice. Okay, so I'd like to see that status date. So I'm going to right click in this blank area where it says grid lines. I'm going to pull down where it says status date here. You got to remember to pull down, otherwise you don't see it. That's the other thing. So pull it down, see that status date, put solid line, put red, click OK. If you forget any of these, it won't do that, right? And make sure you get status date, or it'll put some other kind of lines that you may not like. I'm going to click OK, and there it is. Status date is showing. So that is the date that we're going to update to. Now, I want you to think that when we're updating, this is very important stuff. I'm going to go through some of this stuff in the next few videos in more detail, but just think, you're looking back. This has all happened. To the left, it's either happened or you have to reschedule it. That's what's going on. I went into a lot more detail in the previous video on updating because I want to cover recovery today. But we're going to update this. So the place to do that is to click the square icon box, right click, go to tracking. All right. And in tracking, then we can put actual starts and actual finishes. So I've actually got a start milestone there, and we were going to start on January 11th. So I'm going to actually say that we didn't start. Let's go to January. We didn't start till January 12th, and that's done. So I could type in here 100%, right? And that should fill in this, right? Which it does. I can then say what's going on with apply for permit. Now, usually in this screen, I like to insert the duration column. So I right click, insert column, type D for duration, and there it is. And so I'm going to say that the application for permit actually took 2 days longer than we expected. Okay. And so that's 22 days. So that lengthens that out. And I'm going to say that everything else pretty much went the way that we planned. It's moved, but it pretty much went the way that we planned, because that's the point of putting the critical path in. It moves everything. So a quick way to fill this in, like I could put in here and I could type in 100% and it will fill that in with a dark bar, right? I'm going to zero that out though. So I'm just going to put 0. An easy way, if everything is where you want it to be and it's to the left of the status date, then an easy way is just to select everything at that point, go to the task tab and go to where it says mark on track, click there, and it marks everything on track up to the status date, which is nice. It won't mark anything to the right of the status date. Really cool. Okay. Now, what's happening? I don't know. I don't know what's exactly happening here. So to find out what's happening or to see what's happening, then I would have to look at, I'm going to slide to the left, I would have to, and go to my square icon box, I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to variant screen. Now I can see, oh, we're 3 days behind schedule. So now I know what's happening. And we started 1 day late. I would always keep track of why, what's going on. Put a note, designer had to correct small design error. 1 day late, submitting, right? You're putting in the reason. When you think about your updating and recovery process, I want you to think that you're writing the story of how this project was built, right? It's like you're writing a novel, but it shouldn't be a novel. It should actually be a non-fiction book. It shouldn't be fictional. So we want to enter that information with notes and when something is delayed. And so then this actually took 2 days longer. So basically permit department. Permit department took 2 days longer than planned. So you're keeping track of the reasons. So two things are going on, right? This pushed us out a day and this took a day longer. Now, if I really want to visualize this much better, I would go to a different screen. And if we slide to the left, right click, there's what we call the tracking Gantt. All right, so we've got the tracking Gantt going on here. We've got the tracking Gantt going on here. All right, so the tracking Gantt is showing us here that we are, again, going back here, we started 1 day late. The bottom bar is the plan. That's the baseline. The top bar is what's changed. So it's gone out 1 day. You can see the little milestone difference. There's the 1 day delay, and this is basically 3 days longer. We can count it there. Usually I like to be in this screen and I go to the variant screen. So usually I'll have both screens up. I'm going to make this bigger so you can see it a little bit better with whatever screen you're looking at. So there you go. Now it's a lot bigger here. So all I did was I went to format text styles. If you ever want to make your text bigger or smaller, you can do that. And so maybe I'm just going to shrink the time scale a little bit. Double click here. So I'm going to shrink the time scale, bring it down to 55%. Click OK. All right. So I've got that shrunk down, and now I can see the weeks that's going on. You notice I don't see the status date here. I can tell where the status date is. It pretty much stops there. This other line here, that's the current date. All right. So that's my current date. Usually you want the current date closer to the status date because you want everything should be fresh in your mind of what you're updating it for. So I'm going to hover over here, right click, do that again. So I got to put the grid line for the status date in this view as well because it's a different Gantt chart view, tracking is, and so I've got to put it in this view so that I can see it here. But once I do that, when I flip back and forth between screens from then on, I shouldn't have to do it anymore. All right, so now I can see exactly where it is and what's going on. Now, what I should have done when we started was I should have saved this file and called it the actual baseline file. But because I didn't do that, I'm going to call this the update file now because I can go back and I can change the other one that I had, so that's not a problem. But I'm going to now save this as the update, and this is my status date was February 17th, 23, right? So I'm going to show you how I do that. I'm going to go File, Save As, right? I'm going to go File, Save As. I'm going to go to where my current file is, and I'm going to go, I've created this little folder here. I'm going to put it in this folder, and I'm going to rename it. because I'm going to get into file naming protocols in upcoming videos as well. So I'm going to call this number 1, because this is going to be the first update for this project. Job 323, third project of 2023, let's say, or whatever year, whatever job numbers your company uses. Classroom remodel, like it might be U of T, University of Toronto, classroom remodel, whatever it might be. So wherever you're working, George Brown College. So I'm going to put now that this is update, and it's February 17th, 2023. You're good to put the whole year because many construction projects, in our cases, run 3-4 years. Depending on what it is. So I've got 1, and I've got classroom remodel update February 17th, 2023. Okay, so I've just done that. I've got this, and I've updated it. And I know I'm 3 days late, and I know why I was 3 days late, right? So permit department took 2 extra days. We were 1 day late in submitting it. Writing the story for how this project was built. So that's why we are 3 days behind. Great. That is historical looking, as I said in the previous video. So in the previous video, I went into a lot of detail on this, showed you a few extra other things, but we're looking historically. That is looking backwards. Well, you know what? We're done with that, right? What's done is done. We can't change the past, but now we're looking to the future. How do we correct this? So I'm going to do a file save as again, and this time I'm just going to go back to my folder here, and I'm going to keep everything the same, except I'm going to call this recovery. And I'm going to save it. So now we're going to be looking forward. We know what got us here. Now we're going to be looking forward. How do we get this time back? So in simple terms, this is what a recovery is all about. And this is why it's so important to have a well-developed critical path that we talked about in the first few videos. Why it's important to have everything linked. You saw how everything moved as a result of these time impacts. If there's things that we say won't move or don't need to move, or we can do other things, now is our time to correct those things, right? And to see whether we can get this project back on track. Now, you have to be careful with scheduling software because you can do anything. Like anytime you get behind, you can always make it come back. You can do, Houdini type things, but that doesn't always work in the real world. So always make sure that you're careful about that. I'll talk about the direct method that I've developed in an upcoming video as well, so that you have a process and a framework to follow. But typically what we want to think about is we want to think about looking along the critical path, right? So that's the first thing. I always say detect along the critical path. It's not helping us to, shorten this. It's not on the critical path. It's got lots of float, so that won't help us, right? The next thing is look more immediate, all right? Look more immediate. Look sooner rather than later. Don't be going down here and saying, oh, I'll just insert the duration column so we can see what's going on. Insert column D for duration. Don't be going down here and saying, oh, we've allowed 10 days for the punch list. Okay, so let's make it 7 days. Why would you not want to do that? It'll fix it, maybe, if it's on the critical path. Maybe it's not, I'm not sure. Let's see, is it even on the critical path before I go any further? So I'm just going to go scroll to task. Remember, you can go to the task tab, scroll to task, bring it right up on your screen. Yeah, it is critical. So I could get some time from that. This will also turn critical shortly too. So I could get 2 of the 3 days back with this. I'd have to shorten this as well. But that's not a good idea because it's at the end of the project. Something else is going to happen tomorrow, next week, next month. We want to try to fix these things sooner rather than later, so that more immediately. We also want to look for the low or no cost solution. Like what's going to be the most beneficial to us cost-wise? Can we fix this without incurring extra costs? Can we fix this and save money? Maybe that's a possibility. Does happen. So you got to look at that kind of framework. And then the next thing I say is experiment, try different things. So in recovery, you should be experimenting. You can even save the file under another name and just play around with it for a while, right? And get ideas. Bounce the ideas off with your team, with the trade partners to make sure that it's going to work. This is that collaboration aspect. Getting the software, leveraging the software to your advantage is important, very important. So I'm looking at this and I'm following this along, and I'm trying to figure out where can I get that time back, and I'm thinking about it, right? And I'm thinking, okay, well, procurement, set up trailers. And so I've got procurements taking longer. In this case, it's moved out. Maybe we feel, there's some issues getting some of the procurements, with supply chain issues and that sort of thing going on. But we're looking and say, well, you know what? We could still set up the trailer earlier, right? Get that all set up. Why are we waiting till that finishes? We could easily save 2 days here. So I'm going to click -2 days. So all I did was I double clicked on this arrow and I went to -2, and that should pull us back. Or I could also double click on the activity. If you recall from earlier videos, we could go to predecessors and it's the same thing. I could go -1, -2 days, be in the right one, and that should pull it back 2 days. So now I'm only got a finish variance, start variance, yes, finish variance of 1 day. And of course, temporary washrooms, that's the same deal. I could easily pull this one back here and do -1 day. And now you see we're back on track. So yeah, we had a few little hiccups, but these were minor things and we were able to fix them, and we were able to fix them pretty quick. And these aren't going to be things that are going to cost us extra money, right? So these aren't going to be things that are going to cost us extra money. Speaking of which, how does this affect us money-wise? That's another question. So if I go to the variance screen for cost, and I see, oh, I'm ahead money. I'm actually ahead money, right? How is that possible? Well, it's likely because of how you assign the resources, and you have variable resources, variable costs. So if I actually go to my entry screen, I can see I've assigned the PM 20% over here. That was all, right? That was all that was assigned for the PM. It wasn't 100%, it was 20%, right? And I've assigned the PM here 20%, but the site super 100%. So if we're shortening time here, we're saving on the site supers costs, right? We lost money on the PMs, but we're saving on the site supers, the way I'm seeing this right now. But I could go into more detail. I can slide to the left, right click. Remember the resource sheet we developed in one of the previous videos? Go to the resource sheet. I've got PM is $100 an hour site sewer, so they're about the same hourly rate. If I click on this square icon box over here and right click, go to cost, then I can see, okay, so I actually am saving on the PM. No, the PM's actually, costing an extra $160 because I lost the whole 3 days on the 20%. But the site super, I'm saving a day overall. So that's going to be that $800, right? So I'm saving a day overall the way it's been moved because I overlapped the washroom and the trailer setup. That's what's happening. Now they're kind of going at the same time. So that's a pretty good savings that way. So we're actually ending up with this new plan. We're actually ending up, so click here, right click, cost. We're actually ending up that we're saving a little bit of money with this particular issue. Those are always fun when that happens. The nice thing when you cost load a schedule, you're thinking about variable costs. And I think one of the things that you should always understand is there is a cost per diem every day that you run your project. You might have a trade partner that takes longer on your project, but if and you don't have to pay them extra because they're a fixed price, but if you have to stay longer and manage that project longer, then there's your costs. There's the costs of your trailer being there longer. There's all these other costs. And so it's good to really understand that, and it really fits in then with how you're looking and thinking about your projects. And even if it's not cost loaded your project, you should still have that running in the background so that you better comprehend what's going on. So yes, that's essentially recovery. And I'm going to slide again to the left. Let's take a look at that tracking Gantt again. And if I pull this over here, we can see they're lined up. The bottom bar and the top bar, they're lined up. If I go to the variance screen, they should be zeroed out once I get to the variances, right? So once I get past to where we covered the time, they should be zeroed out. And for every activity that I changed, like this one here, set up trailer, put a note to say what you're doing, all right? Moving setup 2 days earlier to compensate for delay. Oops. Click OK. Then the next one, temp washroom. Overlap temp washrooms with trailer setup. A lot of times it may mean that you got to communicate with other trades and different things like that. You can make notes of that. But basically you're documenting what's going on in the project, and you will remember that. You're creating that historical record. You're creating that non-fiction book. Okay? So that's what I kind of wanted to give you the introduction of. We'll get into more detail as we go along with this. We'll be looking at things like file naming protocols, multiple updates and recoveries. We'll be looking at also filling in a schedule narrative, as well as I mentioned the file naming protocols, change orders, and the impacts of changes, and inserting a change into the schedule to see what happens. And if it's a big change, how do we actually set up a baseline for the change? So hopefully this has given you some ideas, and please click subscribe. You can check the playlist for the previous videos, check which files to download for each video, and enjoy. My name's Tom Stevenson, and again, have a wonderful day. Bye for now.